if there is a utopia and there is a place where one doesn't have to worry about any more pain, suffering, hopefully Mr. Inoki is definitely there. I think we all can definitely be in agreement on that one. Wrestling legend Antonio Inoki. Just honestly, you want to talk about a pioneer. You want to talk about a founder. You truly want to talk about a trailblazer. Some of those terms are always said about somebody when they pass. And for some, maybe it's a case where you've heard those phrases too many times, but in describing Antonio Inoki, there is without a shadow of doubt that he fits all of those respected phrases, that he matches up to all of those respected words, because when it's all said and done, at the end of the day, Mr. Inoki really did transform the entire industry, and right down to the point, not just as far as professional wrestling goes, but even when you go back to try and trace the roots of MMA, you could almost essentially call him one of, if not the godfather for what was to come of MMA, as far as him kind of somewhat laying down the foundation of that and everything. But he had passed away at the age of 79. He had been battling many health complications over the years. He damn near died 4 times over the years. I'm not really sure how many of you all were aware of that, but yes, he died damn near 4 times over the years. He died at his home. Hopefully it was peacefully, but you know, you look back on his career, we're talking about almost 40 years in the ring. You heard me right, almost 40 years in the ring. His wrestling career began at the tender age of 17. 17. So we're talking 1960, folks. 1960. And at that point, that was just really something unprecedented to hear. Okay. And, you know, leading up to this, he was a former regional and all Brazilian champion in track and field. You know, and him and his family, they moved around a little bit because they had fell down on hard times. This was all leading up to him ultimately going into the wrestling industry and getting his training on and everything. But the very first wrestling promotion that he ended up working for was the Japanese Wrestling Association. That was pretty much where he got his breaks and everything, being trained by the likes of Carl Gotch. I mean, so many people had a hand in training him, but it's definitely some key names in there if you know your wrestlers and everything. And he didn't last in the Japanese Wrestling Association that long. If anything, maybe a year, maybe possibly a year plus. And then he was fired from the promotion because he had attempted to try to do a takeover of the company. You know, his heart and all that was in the right place. Obviously, there were some things that he was seeing that, you know, wasn't quite going right with, you know, management and all of that. And, you know, felt respectfully that as far as a change in management goes, change in ownership goes, it was desperately needed. And, you know, once his ulterior motives came to light, Japanese Wrestling Association pretty much got rid of him with the quickness. And this pretty much had forced him to go into starting up New Japan Pro Wrestling, basically. And, you know, pretty much as they all say, you know, the rest is history, you know, as far as New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that promotion alone had became one of the most profitable, successful, recognizable Japanese wrestling promotions, period. and Antonio Inoki was the face of it all. You know, there were several wrestlers that he had an opportunity to face. My God, Luthez, Andre the Giant, Gotch, who he had already named. Of course, one that really stands out to me in my mind, you got to take it back. And I know probably a lot of shows are going to be talking about this at great length and everything, but you got to take it back to 1976 when he did a wrestling match with Muhammad Ali. You got to take it back to that. Okay, so let me set this up properly. You got to rewind it back. All right, for those of you like your boxing and all that, you got to rewind it back to 1975. And at that point, Muhammad Ali was the reigning WBC, and he was the WBA champion. All right, so I mean, this guy was pretty much on top of the world and everything. And according to famous promoter Bob Oram, who was Ali's manager, he told him, hey, you know, there's some Japanese people that's offering us a lot of money if you were to fight Antonio Inoki. And Muhammad Ali, not really thinking much of it, not really taking it too seriously. It was just talking a whole bunch of trash, like, yeah, whatever. Like, I beat his ass. Like, you know, word pretty much had got back to those in Japan, and they pretty much were like, oh, okay, well, you know what? Let's go ahead then. Let's make this freaking match happen. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's do this. So the match went down. And you would just think that when you hear, wait a minute, especially if you're familiar with Antonio Inoki, you know, and you've never seen this bout with Muhammad Ali, you're going, wait a minute, Muhammad Ali, Antonio Inoki. Holy shit, that sounds like, yo, it would be a fucking, yo, what's going on with that, right? Bout lasted 15 rounds, okay? 15 rounds. But here's the thing. Inoki going into this was handicapped like a mofo. I mean, there were so many ridiculous stipulations that were applied to this. Yeah, he couldn't do chops. I'm trying to think what else he couldn't do. But that was for starters. There was a lot that Antonio Inoki could not do. So when it was all said and done, for like all 15 rounds, Inoki would somehow end up on his back, and all he basically was doing was trying to kick the living hell out of Muhammad Ali, who's trying to go in there, and he's trying to swing with his punches and all that. A couple of times there, Ali's legs had got cut up pretty bad, and they were just oozing with blood. And I don't know if they were overhyping it, but I remember Ali's people had said something to the effect of, yo, you know, Ali had lost so much blood there, he damn near could have faced amputation with the amount of blood that he was losing and everything. But this match was so bad by those that were in attendance that they were throwing debris. They were demanding, they wanted their money back. They did not like the display that they had saw. And for those of you that like a little bit of fun trivia, as far as how this match was ruled, as far as a winner goes, the judges ruled 71-71. They said it was a tie. So you're going, what kind of bullshit is that, right? And even Inoki, you know, he tried to defend what happened, you know, with this bout. And in a way, he was trying to give that nod to the spectators that had paid to, you know, see this main event attraction. And he said, look, I was handicapped by so many rules. I couldn't do any chops. I couldn't do any tackling. I couldn't even, you know, do any punching. Like, I was handicapped. There was only but so much, right? Like, it doesn't really justify how Inoki was operating in there, but you guys pretty much get it, right? You guys pretty much get the gist. But yeah, that's definitely worth going out of your way, trying to see if you can find some footage. I saw a little something online earlier today, so it really shouldn't be too hard for you guys to, if you know where to look, it shouldn't be too hard for you guys to find some stuff and all that. So, but yeah, decades long operating there with New Japan Pro Wrestling, seeing them through a lot of good times, a little bit of turbulent. He pretty much was right there with New Japan Pro Wrestling right on through his retirement as an in-ring competitor in 1998. Shout out if you remember who his final opponent was for his retirement match in 1998. And then from there, remember in 2005, New Japan Pro Wrestling ultimately was sold to Ukes. And that is the same Ukes gaming development company that was responsible for many, many years, those WWE titles that was coming out. But let's not also forget, there were some sleeper hits that was in there as well, under Ukes, who in part, had did like some subletting to guys like Konami and all that. But remember, Rumble Roses. I love the hell out of that fucking game. Of course, the New Japan Pro Wrestling games that had came out, some of them Ukes was behind and all that. So, that was in 2005. It's kind of funny when I stop and think about it, because I still find it funny that, wait a minute, Ukes currently owns New Japan Pro Wrestling. Like they ended up buying New Japan. Like how crazy is that a gaming development company, right? Publisher, whatever you want to call them, ended up acquiring New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's just some what the fuck kind of shit. That almost sounds like Sega, right? Sega, they end up owning, I don't know, the Washington Commanders or some stupid shit like that. It's kind of like one of those type of deals, right? But, hey, it is what it is. I digress. But Inoki and all those years that he was associated with New Japan Pro Wrestling helped out in more ways than one to really help put that promotion on the map, in the ring, outside of the ring. Something else that I can recall, because I am a big Inoki fan, believe it or not. I don't talk old school wrestling, and I don't know, maybe if there's a demand for it, maybe, I could start up a new series and maybe I could talk some old school wrestling, but you got to have you're going for a particular crowd when you do that. That's the only reason why I don't really dive into it like that as much, especially with today's wrestling fans. I just kind of get the impression that there really isn't that much appreciation for wrestling of yesteryear, as opposed to, maybe say 10 to 15 years ago, there was still that interest. But, now it just feels like we're going the Crips and Bloods route with AEW versus WWE constantly and everything. But let's not also forget when Mr. Inoki done some business with the WWF. If you are a WWF fan, let's not forget when he defeated Bob Backlund, November of '79, winning the WWF Heavyweight Championship. That did not last that long. I think Inoki's title reign lasted maybe a week, if even that, definitely some days. And the championship, he lost it right back to Backlund and everything. And the way he lost it in a match that was pretty much declared a no contest. And it's very interesting because at that point, when he won it, you're going through the analytics of time in WWE, and Inoki was, in fact, the first WWF Japanese heavyweight champion. But because of some of the stuff that was going on there, it was weird with Inoki and WWF and everything, because you had got the match declared a no contest, and then Inoki had refused the title. He didn't want the title back. And as a result of that, it was declared that the title was vacant. And so in WWE's mind. And if you guys had watched SmackDown, I believe Corey Graves had touched upon it and everything. Inoki's reign as WWF World Champion not recognized by the WWE. Fucking crazy, isn't it? Fucking crazy. So, interesting little moment that you had go down there. And WWF, they loved Mr. Inoki. They loved him so much, and they were trying to do everything that they could to get him to, keep working with them and everything. I remember to the point WWF had created a martial arts championship for him. I bullshit you not. Some of you guys may chuckle your asses off hearing that, but they created a martial arts championship for him, and he defended that championship. I don't remember the title defenses. Sadly, I don't remember them, but he did defend the championship here and there. I think the last title defense had came maybe around 1989, but don't quote me on that. It feels like it was maybe 1988 or 1989. And then after that, the title had just, it went on hiatus. Like to this day, the title has yet to be reactivated. Yeah, very interesting. Even when things had finally went sour between WWE and New Japan, and they no longer had, their partnership going on, Inoki, it was interesting because that championship, which pretty much WWF had created, right? Very weird that WWF didn't go, okay, well, look, since our partnership is now dissolved, just go on ahead and give us back our championship. Very interesting. They didn't go that route. It was almost as if it was just, well, what do we care for? We just won't recognize that championship. It is what it is. And so the title was basically abandoned by WWF/E and adopted by Inoki, New Japan, and for a good little bit. Matter of fact, I remember Inoki lost the championship. He did lose the championship, but he got it right back before it was deactivated and all that. So some fun little trivia for you guys right there. But God, who could not forget just some of the matches? Just some. I mean, whether you want to talk about Minoru Suzuki or you want to go with Dr. Death, Steve Williams, of course, 1983 when he went up against the immortal Hulk Hogan. I'm sure by now everybody, and if you have not seen it yet, you definitely owe it to yourself to see it. But it's the one time that you see the Hulkster. Holy shit, Hulk Hogan actually knows how to fucking wrestle. What the hell? Who would have thunk it, right? And you're just amazed at what you're seeing there and what Inoki was able to bring out of the Hulkster and everything. And you're just like, whoa, what the fuck? Of course, Collision in Korea, Inoki versus Ric Flair. I mean, there's a lot of good Inoki matches that's out there. A lot of good shit that's out there. So it's definitely, worth going out of your way if you haven't, checked out any of the stuff that I'm mentioning. And, do your research, spend some time, especially if you're a fan of wrestling from yesteryear and everything, go in and check it out. Outside of the wrestling ring, Inoki greatly influenced by combat sports. Greatly influenced to the point, again, I mentioned earlier how, some of the stuff that he was doing, was kind of essentially the back end blueprint for what would become with the UFC's, Bellators and all of that. But he ended up following along the footsteps of his father and dipping into the world of politics. This is something that I don't think a lot of people are really going to bring up in their retrospective outlooks on Mr. Inoki and everything. But it's very important when you're mentioning him to those that are going to be writing up pieces on him, talking about him on their respected shows. You got to look at how polarizing of a figure he was from the political world spectrum. And I'll explain why. Just as he had the type of impact that he had as a wrestler, definitely as a political figure as well. So, he goes into the politics in the late 80s, going into the mid 90s, when he had founded the Sports and Peace Party. And he got elected to the House of Councilors. And he served from 89 to 95. And then he went for a second term, 2013 to 2019, under the Japan Restoration Party. And one particular moment where you go, holy shit, this guy actually did that. I remember there were some Japanese hostages that got caught up in the crosshairs, back around Saddam Hussein, back around that fucking time frame. And Inoki pretty much had led the way in trying to, get those Japanese. I don't know if they were reporters or soldiers. I cannot recall right now, but somehow they had ended up getting in the crosshairs there in the war that was going on with Saddam Hussein. And, he pretty much, I'm talking about Inoki, he pretty much had brokered the deal to pretty much, get the men and women back and everything from then Iraq president Saddam Hussein. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think Japanese, I think Iraq had held Japanese nationals hostage, basically trying to use them as nothing more than human shields, if I remember it correctly. And when word got to Antonio Inoki, he did his very best to go with the hostages' families, traveled out to Iraq to try to, get a peaceful release of them and everything. And after everything was all said and done, I mean, Hussein and Inoki, very, very, very friendly with one another. Very friendly with one another. Inoki, as far as greatest moments in his career or just life, constantly when he would be asked, that would be something that he would bring up and everything. So very critical moment right there. Very, very critical moment right there. So there's a lot. And, we talked about it earlier, but his health was not doing good. I'm aware of the video that's floating around right now where apparently his last words, as he's kind of like essentially on his deathbed. I don't know if that's his deathbed at home. I could not bear myself to watch that video, just seeing him in the current state that he was in. I didn't want to watch that. Now, if there's a transcript that becomes available, I'd be more than willing to read that, word for word. But I couldn't get past 30 seconds. So it's pretty tough to watch, especially if you've had a loved one that, has been suffering and, you're watching them slowly deteriorate, and pretty much it's getting to a point where, all right, now we pretty much got to put this person in hospice. Yeah, it's about that time. Right. I mentioned earlier how he mentioned, I think it was in an interview with Tokyo Sports, how he he should have died like 4 times. Right. Technically he died like 4 times, but he kept defying the odds and all of that. One of the conditions that he was diagnosed with in recent years was systemic transthyretin Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm butchering it, I apologize in advance. I did actually look up how to pronounce this word before we went live, but it's a condition that's called systemic transthyretin. And for those of you that need a little bit of a medical breakdown, what exactly that is, I looked up the medical term and I'm going to read you the definition as it is here. It is a slowly progressive condition characterized by the buildup of abnormal deposits of a protein called amyloid in the body's organs and tissue. These proteins deposit most frequently occur in the peripheral nervous system, which is made up of nerves connecting the brain and spinal cord to muscles and sensory cells that detect sensations such as touch, pain, heat, and sound. Protein deposits in these nerves result in a loss of sensation in the extremities. The autoimmune nervous system, which controls involuntary body function. So that kind of gives you just a little bit of an idea, what's kind of going on with him. But if you want to, if that's still kind of way over your head and you really don't understand what exactly was going on with him, WebMD, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the doctors that's been popping up as of late, talking about what's been going on with some of these pro wrestlers health wise and, giving their medical opinion, breaking it down in a way where it's very easy to understand and follow. I wouldn't be surprised if before the week is out, some of those guys didn't jump out there and put a little something out there. Nice seeing everybody give Mr. Inoki his props. From Triple H to WWE to Tony Khan to the NWA, Iron Sheik talking about how he was his teacher. He was Inoki's teacher when he was out here in the U.S. and everything, trying to protect them and all that good stuff. A lot of great touching tributes that's been coming in for the man. I even saw Evan Houston, one of the producers for Dark Side of the Ring. I would just imagine he is probably saying, wow, if you would have told me that when we got Inoki for an episode of Dark Side of the Ring, and then pretty much shortly after that, right? Like who would have thought that and everything? I mean, that just makes those last few moments even that much more valuable, sentimental, if you will. So lost a great wrestling icon there, but you know what? He, like many of the other wrestling legends that passed before him, that will definitely, there's more. That's, eventually we all got to leave this world at some point and everything. Mr. Inoki may now have passed on, but his legacy and the great body of work that he left behind and the many lives that he's been able to touch, he's going to live on forever in the hearts and minds of his colleagues, his family, his friends, definitely the fans as well. So rest in power, Mr. Antonio Inoki. Yeah, definitely wouldn't mind hearing some of you guys' thoughts that are into the old school wrestling and you know a thing or two about Mr. Inoki. Wouldn't mind hearing from some of you guys. You all share some of your memories on him and everything. So we'll do a transition now and lighten up the mood just a little bit more. But hopefully you appreciated that nice old school type of wrestling talk. And like I said, if you guys want me to talk more old school wrestling, it's just kind of a matter of letting your voices be heard. And I definitely, because honestly, I like talking old school wrestling. It's not a week that goes by I find myself going on YouTube or Daily Motion looking up some old school wrestling stuff from time to time, especially when I have a day or two off work and family's asleep and I'm just kicking back, jamming to some tunes. I'll just go down the weird YouTube rabbit hole looking up some old school stuff. Just last week, I was looking up some old school matches, whatever I could find on my girl Mildred Burke. Just anything I could find. I was looking some stuff up on her.